Good morning. Today is Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. This week's Torah portion, the Parsha of Tavo, begins with the mitzvah of Bikkurim. That means that during the time when the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, was standing in Jerusalem, the farmer would come with the first of his crops, Bikkurim, the beginning, the first of his crops, and he would carry it to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem, to the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, and he would present it to the Kohen in the Beit HaMikdash. But it was not enough to present these first fruits. He also had to speak these words, and he had to speak these exact words, and it started as follows: Ve'anisa ve'amarta, and he would answer, and he would say, Arami oved avi, an Aramean sought to destroy my forefather. We generally understand that that refers to Lavan, who was trying to destroy, or certainly to harm, our patriarch Yaakov, Jacob. And then we went down to Egypt, and we were small in number. We became there a great nation. The Egyptians treated us cruelly, and we cried out to God, and God heard our voice, and God took us out of Egypt. God brought us to the land of Israel, and God has given us and me these wonderful first fruits, and now I bring them as a gift to the Kohen in the Beit HaMikdash. Of course, most of that paragraph is famously the way that we tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt at the Pesach Seder, at the Passover Seder, as part of the Haggadah. But our rabbis teach us in the Talmud about how important that recitation is for the farmer bringing his first fruits. The recitation, word for word, was essential to the fulfillment of the mitzvah. And it's interesting the way it begins. The Torah says, Ve'anisa ve'amarta. The farmer will answer and will say. Well, answer means to answer to a question. Say, the saying, the words are directed to the Kohen. So, what was the question? What is the question to which this statement is an answer? The Torah does not tell us what the question was. It just says the farmer has to answer and say the following words. So Ibn Ezra suggests that presumably the Kohen would say to this person carrying a basket of fruits, "What are you doing here? What is it that you have brought?" And in answer to that question, the farmer would say, Arami oved avi, the whole text, he would say, and that would be his answer or her answer. The problem with that is, why does the Torah skip the question? I mean, if it is a question and answer, so let the Torah tell us what the question is, and then let the farmer give the answer. Why omit the question? That's number one. And number two, is the question really necessary? I mean, if you come to the Beit HaMikdash, if you're a Kohen, and you come to the Beit HaMikdash, and you know it's the season when everyone is bringing their first fruits, and you see a whole line of farmers waiting for you, and each one of them has a basket of fruits waiting to speak to you, I mean, you pretty much understand what they're doing there. Do you actually have to ask this question of every single farmer, one after the other, the identical question, just in order to receive the identical answer? So I want to share an insight of Baily Newman that also answers a third question, and that is, what does any of this have to do with our lives today? Even though we do not have this official, formal mitzvah of Bikkurim, in what way is this relevant and practical to us? And she demonstrates this in a very powerful way. Stories, Baily Newman explained, form our understanding of all of experience. Stories can be redemptive, they can be rebellious, they can be reassuring. Khalil Gibran once said that next to hunger and thirst, our most basic human need is for storytelling. Because stories are what give us context, and depending on the story we tell, it can give us strength and hope. Stories don't just influence our reality, but they create it. The story we tell about something creates the reality of how we will live with it. Hannah Arendt wrote, "Stories reveal meaning without committing the error of defining it." And we find the first time that the telling of the story of the Jewish people becomes the obligation of every single Jew in our Torah portion, which makes us, to use the words of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, a nation of storytellers. He writes, only in Israel and nowhere else is the injunction to remember felt as a religious imperative of an entire people. We, the Jewish people, are unique in that. And so in the mitzvah of Bikkurim, we, the Jewish people, every single one of the Jewish people, we are obligated to tell the story of our past. And we utilize this passage as our story every year at our Passover Seder. This is the way we tell our story. But note that telling a story is always, inevitably, a choosing of what to tell and what not to tell, and how to tell it. The story of every single event can be told in multiple ways. So we must ask ourselves, what is the version of the story of the struggles we have experienced personally and collectively? What story are we going to tell? We can become Lavan, who tells ourselves stories about our need to destroy the Yaakovs in our midst. That could be our story. We could become the farmer, who tell ourselves the story of where the fruits came from and the work that went into planting and fertilizing and harvesting those fruits. Those could be stories that we might tell. So the Torah does not need to state the Kohen's question, what are you doing here? Because the question and the answer is not really for the Kohen. The question is really posed to ourselves and to every one of us. What story is it that we tell ourselves about our history? What is the story that we tell ourselves nationally and individually? What is the story I tell myself about what I have gone through, about what a certain experience means for me? So let's take a moment and think about this farmer who has brought these fruits and is about to give them to the Kohen in the Beit HaMikdash. Let's think for a moment, what stories might that farmer tell on his own if the farmer is left to themselves to come up with their own story? Well, they might have been thinking about the struggles of the past year. Here I am with these first fruits, but it wasn't easy this year. There wasn't enough rain, and the rain came at the wrong time, and the planting didn't go right, and I didn't have enough help. And so here's what I'm bringing, but it was really, really difficult. Or maybe the farmer is thinking to him or herself, here I am, standing in front of the Kohen, bringing this basket of fruits, and in front of me and behind me is a whole long line of people who are doing exactly the same thing. So I wonder, of what use is my basket? What's the purpose of what I'm doing, since it's just being replicated by so many others? And because a farmer on his or her own might come up with lots of different stories, and in doing so, create for themselves lots of different realities, the Torah helps us. The Torah creates for us the story that every one of us tells. Not what they might have said to the Kohen. The story forces them to reevaluate, to concretize, to attach meaning and motivation to their deeds, to put the context of their individual action into a larger story. Because the stories we tell each other matter. They shape our reality. Anthony Del Mello wrote, "A lost coin is found by means of a candle. The deepest truth is found by means of a simple story." And so when the Kohen asks, what is it that you are bringing here today? The Kohen has the moment, the farmer has the opportunity to reflect and to tell the story of the Jewish people. To see himself or herself as a link in a historic chain, and therefore to see God in their life in a real way. I am the product of all of this history that brought me and my family to this land, and God has given me these fruits, and now I bring them as a way to say thanks to God, to be grateful for God's presence in our life, and to see the struggles that I have endured over the past year or many years as purposeful, as the unfolding of a grand historic promise of God, so that this experience is not just a harvest, it is a triumph of Jewish history. It's an expression of Jewish destiny, and it becomes a reinforcement of our faith in God. We need to be mindful that what we tell ourselves and what we tell others about the work we do and what we gain from it, what we can offer, what we have suffered, we need to be mindful that the way we fashion those stories matters. So we should be formulating our story about everything we go through, collectively as a Jewish people, individually, especially now, at the end of the Jewish year. This mitzvah becomes highly personal and applicable for every single one of us. What is the story that I will tell about my life over this past year? Will it be the story of the struggles that I have had, of the failures that I have had, of the lost opportunities? Will that be the story that I tell myself and others and God about this year? Maybe it will be the story of what I learned, the story about how I grew, how I became stronger, how I showed resilience in this past year. Maybe that will be my story. And we have to choose carefully, because the wording and the structure of the stories we tell ourselves about our lives, that creates their reality. That creates what our lives mean for others, and even more so for ourselves. And most of all, for our children. Because we are a nation of storytellers. And we are living in a world made of stories. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you all soon in person.